Hello and welcome to Degrassi Schools In. I'm Evie, and to give a quick little short rundown of the premise of this podcast, this is a spoiler-free podcast documenting my first ever watch of Degrassi Junior High and Degrassi High as a longtime fan of the later generations of the show. I am super excited for this month's guest. For the most part, I've had a lot of friends and fans on the show, and I'm super excited to take this step into somebody who is on the show. I have Pat Beaven here today, who played Stephanie Kaye and Arthur Kowalski's mom on Degrassi Junior High. Hello, Pat. Welcome to Degrassi Schools In.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here, Evie.
I'm so happy to have you. The episode that we're talking about today is Best Laid Plans, which is the first episode that you appear of. To my knowledge, you only appear in 2 episodes of Degrassi Junior High.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm trying to only stick to what I've seen so far and not skip ahead, but I do know that much, especially from editing your episode of the Degrassi Kid podcast, which was fantastic, by the way. But yeah, we are talking about Best Laid Plans today. I'm super excited to talk about that. This episode aired on March 1st, 1987, and it was written by Yan Moore and directed by Kit Hood. How do you feel about the fact that it was 1987?
Very long ago.
I'm really bad at math. 30, I don't know how many years ago that was.
I don't know. 30, maybe 30.
We're both arts people. We're not math people. We're gonna go with 37. It was a long time ago.
A long time ago.
Let's get into the synopsis of the episode. 13-year-old Arthur plans to show his friends a pornographic video when his mother goes out on Friday night. Meanwhile, older sister Stephanie makes plans to sleep with Wheels that same night. Their mother catches on to their plan just in time. It's a really fun episode. It's like classic Degrassi.
Yeah, it's pretty iconic.
It is. I love it. And I love the way that Degrassi is covering such kind of taboo topics at the time. It was very controversial. How did you feel when you read, when you got the synopsis of this episode and discovered the kind of topics that you were going to be covering?
Well, it was pretty surprising because especially talking about those things with very young teens, right?
Yeah, it's junior high.
I guess, yeah, Stephanie was supposed to be maybe 15.
Yeah, I don't even know if she was 15. I
think Arthur was 12 or 13.
He's a baby. Arthur's tiny. I still can't get over. Every time I see him, I'm just like, he's a baby. I love him. Yeah. But yeah, they're so young. Even now, I really can't think of a lot of examples of shows that I can think of shows with older teens and a lot of 20-something-year-olds playing teenagers that are discussing this type of content. But for kids playing that age, I think it's really surprising. And so you were surprised by that content, but in a good way?
Well, I think it's of course a really important topic, and people didn't cover it, for kids that young.
Absolutely. So. It's definitely trailblazing. And that's one of the reasons why Degrassi is so iconic to this day. I have some fun facts from Degrassi Kid, who always comes through with the best facts, because there isn't a lot of trivia online about these episodes, interestingly. So a lot of it I have to hit up Degrassi Kid, and that they know everything and they're the source. So some interesting facts. This episode was originally meant to set up a pregnancy storyline between Stephanie Kaye and Joey Jeremiah. Did you know that?
I didn't know that until I learned it from Jocelyn.
I find that so fascinating. And that we actually, when we went to Toronto a couple months back, we discovered some original episode outlines and documents that I am actually making a bonus episode about to cover the one for this episode, where we're going to discuss the different episode with how it would have played out with Joey. So I'm very excited to share that with the world.
It's very cool that you had access to that.
We're very lucky, and I'm very excited to share that exclusive information. So yeah, I feel very lucky to be in the position to be able to get that information, first of all, and share it with other fans, second of all.
That is very cool.
Thank you. The other fun fact that I have from Degrassi Kid is that the extra in the background of the pharmacy scenes is Kit Hood's mom, Eve Jennings.
Yeah, and she shows up, so it's so adorable, like her watching the boys buy condoms.
I love a good like reactive extra in the background that like it really adds to the scene, and I think it's so fun that that's also somebody like significant to the production as well. That it's Kit Hood's mom. I think that's very cool. I love.
Yeah, her looks were just great.
I know she was a very good. I'm not familiar. I don't know if she was actually an actress at all, but
I don't know.
she played it well. Yeah, I would be curious to know that. But I wanted to, before we get into more of the episode discussion, I wanted to ask you some general questions about Degrassi. I'm curious, how much of Degrassi have you watched?
I've seen pretty well all. I mean, of course, I watched all Degrassi Junior High as it was going on. Degrassi High, Next Generation, Degrassi Next Class, the movie School's Out. So I've pretty well followed
Yeah.
the whole Degrassi scene.
Yeah, I wanted to ask because you commented on a post of mine the other day. I post little fan edits. I posted one of the character Lola, and you commented, "I love Lola."
Oh, I love Lola.
I loved that. That comment like made my day so much because Lola is my favorite character, and
Oh,
that crossover of like you being from all like Degrassi Junior High and you loving Lola just was so adorable. So I wanted to, if there was a chance for me to bring that up in this chat, I wanted to. So I love the fact that you love Lola. I want to know like what do you love about Lola? I know that she's just so cute.
she is so cute.
She's
You just
adorable.
can't stop looking at her when she's
I
on screen,
know.
which is nice. And I don't know. She just, she knows what she wants. Should she go for it? I love Lola, but I also love Manny. And I don't know.
They're very much the same kind of archetype. I feel like Lola was like that. I liked that Degrassi very much because Manny was kind of a next generation version of Stephanie to a degree. And then I feel like Lola was kind of the next generation. There was like Allie in between that, but we're getting into like, but just fair. Yeah, I feel like I can see a direct line from Stephanie to Lola. So I love that she wasn't very much, she didn't have to do the like hiding her clothes or anything like that, but I can see like, I see a line. So I love that that was, and just that being my favorite character. I love that you love her. So I love that. My next question was going to be, did you watch Degrassi during the time that you were on it? But yes, you did. I love that.
It's interesting because my daughter was just a little bit younger than that at that time.
True.
And so all of her friends were watching it and were very involved with the characters and everything. And so I just.
You definitely have that advantage. That makes sense that your daughter was around that age. She was pretty much the target audience. So yeah, I love that. I love that you are so like entrenched in Degrassi that you've watched it so much that you have that connection. So there were episodes of Degrassi Junior High and Degrassi High, I believe also, that ended up getting banned in certain countries for the content. Like we said, there was controversial content, the fact that they were talking about sex, and later on they have like a teen pregnancy. I'm curious, were you aware at the time that those episodes were being banned in certain places?
At the time, I don't think I was aware of that. I think one of the episodes was the rumor has it about Miss Avery possibly being gay, and the It's Late episode.
Yes. Yeah.
Pregnancy. I think those were some, but I don't think I was aware of that at the time.
Yeah. I feel like news didn't travel as much also back then. Like you weren't getting a constant stream of like what was happening. And I think like the UK was one of the countries that was banning. You weren't finding out what was happening on the day-to-day in UK unless it was like huge. So that makes sense.
Right. Very true.
So I asked you about when you found out about the content of the episode, but in general, did Degrassi seem groundbreaking or kind of like controversial at the time when it was airing?
It did, because they did cover subjects that just weren't covered or weren't covered in such a real fashion. Young teens contemplating having sex and buying condoms, abusive parents, questioning sexuality, sexual harassment, things like that. And Degrassi handled them in such a way that they weren't cut and dried and everything was solved in one episode
Right.
necessarily. And I really liked that because in a lot of shows that might have covered those things, they kind of had all the answers and solved it within the
Yeah,
half hour. But Degrassi didn't do that. And I really appreciated the way they handled those kind of things.
I agree. Yeah, it wasn't like issue of the week where it was just,
Right.
and especially I feel like because the issues were happening to the main characters. A lot of the other shows like bring in, oh, my friend is having this issue where his dad is abusing
Mm-hmm.
him or whatever. But it wasn't that case. That character comes back and reoccurs, and we see them in a bunch of different situations, and those things still
Yes.
happen in the background, which I think is very different from shows
Mm-hmm.
of that ilk. I'm curious, do you have any standout memories with the cast to share?
The things I remember most about shooting Degrassi Junior High was, first of all, just how taken care of everyone was. Kit Hood, who directed the episodes, was so patient, especially with some of the kids who hadn't really done a lot in front of the camera before. He was so patient. And also, Phil Earnshaw, who was the cinematographer, he had such an eye and he was very aware of actors holding looks after their lines were through, and he captured those. And sometimes so much could be said in those silent moments by just a look that the actor had if they held that look. And the fact that he appreciated that and could use that was really special to me as an actor.
I agree. That's a great answer. I'm also curious, in terms of your character, do you remember how much like extra information or description you were given about your character before filming the episode? Like, was it a very like fleshed out character, or did it feel kind of like more you were just playing like an archetype?
Basically, it was pretty much up to me to develop the character according to what would serve the stories, of course. And if the characters of parents, I think, were fleshed out, it was really up to the individual actors. There was no real descriptions given.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, you did a really good job of embodying the character and making her like a real three-dimensional person. So
Thank
I'm
you.
interested. Yeah, I'm interested. It's interesting to find out because you very much embodied a real person to me.
Thank you.
Of course. So I had you rewatch this episode before rewatching it for the podcast. Do you remember the last time that you watched Best Laid Plans?
Over 20 years ago, for
Oh my
sure.
goodness, that's crazy. I'm glad that I could bring you back. How did it feel to rewatch it after all this time?
I I love that episode.
Yeah, it's
I
great.
loved it, and it was great to rewatch.
I love that. Do you feel like you might go back and rewatch any more of Degrassi Junior High, possibly?
Yeah, sometimes I catch stuff late at night, mostly like Next Generation and Next Class, but
Yeah. But you haven't really
yeah,
been tempted to go all the way back before I asked you to?
no, I guess I have my memories, and that's good enough for me.
That's completely fair. So we're going to go ahead and get into talking about the content of Best Laid Plans. I'm
Mhm.
curious, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what do you think of the way that this episode represents topics like sex?
Well, the way I see it, the people who did Degrassi were very concerned about getting it right from the young people's point of view. And I think they've done a great job on that. And there's always that when you're a young teen, there's so many things coming in at you, and you want to do this and you don't know if you should. And I think they did a great job of portraying that kind of thing. Like, why were Wheels and Stephanie thinking about having sex? It
Yeah.
wasn't, what was it, peer pressure or showing off or fitting in or whatever. So I think they did a good job of that.
It's very funny to me because they're like going to the movies. So it's not, there's no, how are you guys going to have sex? Like, why are you guys even thinking about sex? You're going to the movies. You're not going anywhere where that's even a thing. So it's very funny how the mind just very much jumps to that because the hormones, the confusion, and you just like, you don't know, like you're just very confused and curious and all of that. But yeah, you guys are going to the movies. Like you're not,
I know, like, is that
you
what
don't
we're
need
supposed to do
condoms.
on a date? Right.
It's very, you don't even know. So it's very real, I feel like, looking back and like thinking about how I felt at that age of like, yeah, 13, 14, I believe they are. So young. They're babies. Okay. Let's see. So you have talked about being a parent and having a child around that age at the time. I'm curious, how do you think you would have reacted to a situation like what your character dealt with in the episode?
Well, I think we definitely would have ended up talking about it.
Yeah,
And,
I
you know, how ideal to have all the parties together to get everything out in the open, the way it
yeah,
happened in the show. Like, you know, have to talk to your daughter and then confront, you know, the boyfriend or something.
yeah.
Everyone was together and like, okay, got to
You don't have to
talk
like
about this.
awkwardly bring the boyfriend over or whatever. He's already right there. Like, come on,
Right.
we need to talk. It kind of worked out perfectly. It was uncomfortable, clearly, but kind of ideal.
And poor Mike, I just had to let him go. There were bigger things to deal with.
I hope that they rescheduled and had a good date another time. Poor. Do you remember? Does your character have a name? I don't a first name. I don't believe I looked into
No,
it. Okay. Do you have an idea of what it would have been? Have you ever thought
I
about
know what
that?
her name is.
What is it?
Yes.
What's her name?
Well,
Is it
I
a
know
secret?
what her name is. For me, her name was Rhonda.
Rhonda. Okay, I love that. That's cute. Rhonda, and what was the guy's name that she was? Michael. Rhonda and Michael.
Mike. Yes,
Mike.
Michael.
Yeah, I hope they had a good date. I really hope they got a chance
Eventually.
to reschedule. I'm poor Rhonda, poor Miss K, Rhonda K. Did you have a favorite character in this episode?
My favorites, of course, were my kids, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I just loved the interaction between Nicole and Duncan and just the looks between them, especially like at the dinner table when I was bringing up the whole, just the looks between them were just terrific.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were my favorite characters.
they had some very cute sibling moments, and I love
Yeah.
when Degrassi represents those sibling relationships. I feel like that's really strong. It's like a really strong
Mhm.
part of Degrassi, and a lot of my favorite like characters are siblings, and I feel like that's a good way to like bridge the generations and all of that. It creates some great dynamics to see how different characters grow up in the same home yet turn out so differently.
Mhm.
Did you have a favorite moment in this episode?
One of my favorite moments is when we got to see Stephanie's bedroom. I love that, you know, when she's getting ready for her date and she has to pull her earrings off, like, because that was something that's not where it was usually shot. And just to get that glimpse into her bedroom, I
Yeah.
love that moment. And I love the moment where Mrs. K recognizes that the boy who's come to pick her daughter up is the same boy who she sold condoms
Aren't
with.
you the boy? Like,
Yeah.
aren't you?
So I love that when she's making that connection.
I do. Yeah, I love that. That was a very great moment. I do agree about the seeing Stephanie's bedroom. I love all the little set design moments. Like I love seeing inside the characters' lockers, and I love getting a chance to
Mhm.
like see inside. A little shout out to Judy Shiner who did all of that. She's amazing. She's like such an inspiration to me. I got a chance to meet her in Toronto and talk her ear off about like how much I love her and
Nice.
how inspired I am by her. Okay, do you and if you don't remember a specific line, you can paraphrase. Do you have a favorite line from this episode?
I have a couple of favorite lines.
Okay.
One is when Stephanie, you know, gets that milk mustache and she says to her mom, like, I'm not a little kid anymore. When it's so
Yeah.
obvious she is a little kid by the
Okay.
milk mustache. And that line just is wonderful to me. And when Arthur says, don't worry, mom, I'm not sexually active. And you just like, of course you're not sexually active,
You're like
but the
a
way he
little
says it
boy.
is just wonderful.
Yeah, I love some of his line deliveries. I think he's, again, I've already said it, but I will say it a million times. I think he's just like the cutest. And I'm excited to see him grow up. That's the thing about Degrassi is they start off as these little pipsqueaks and they grow into like tall men, basically. And I've seen a couple pictures of Duncan as an adult, like grown up, but I really try to like avoid seeing anything because I want to like be surprised and enjoy like the gradual transition from
Hmm.
child to adult, because that's one of the really valuable things about hiring kids and being able to like track their
Yes.
transition. So you mentioned the scene with Nicole getting the milk mustache. Another scene that I feel like is iconic and kind of similar is you eating the like pasta, is it? You're eating at the
Yes.
table and the pasta drops. We're going to get into the like fan question segment with this. Dave said, "There's a great moment when you and Nicole are eating pasta together. When she asks when your character had sex for the first time, you're taken aback and the pasta slides off your fork. Would this have been the kind of little nuance that you might have added in rehearsal, or would it have been scripted?"
I really, as an actor, I really wish I could claim that I added that nuance. But just like creating the milk mustache, that was written in.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
it was. It was such good like physical comedy, like such a
And
little cute moment.
those things, it's not the big things that usually take a lot of time and a lot of takes. It's those little technical things like make it fall off right at the right moment or get that milk mustache right. So all those little technical things are the tricky things sometimes.
I remembered you talked about the milk mustache moment in Jocelyn's podcast, the Degrassi Kid podcast, about how it took so many takes. So yeah, I was curious if the pasta thing was similar, where it took a bunch
It
of
took a
takes to
few
like
to get it to fall off in a
you
nice clumpy lump just at the right
these
moment.
clumpy lumps. That's great. That's really good to know. I was also very curious about that. Dave also wanted to note that he likes the chemistry that you and Nicole have as mother and daughter. And he asked, did you have much time to rehearse and develop this relationship? In general, how much time did you get to rehearse scenes on Degrassi before shooting?
Virtually none.
Okay.
We'd have a walkthrough on set just a couple of times before shooting each little
Nice.
scene. And that was about it.
Okay. You again, you pulled it off well with what little timing you had. So
Acting, I guess.
acting, it's almost like it's your job or something. That's crazy. Um, since we're talking about your kids, Duncan and Nicole, have you ever run into either of them or any other cast member in Toronto? I guess anywhere? I figure Toronto is
Um,
probably the easiest place.
Nicole, I certainly have. I've seen Nicole in a few stage shows she did. One I remember at Tarragon Theatre. And of course, she had quite a career as a jazz musician.
Nice.
And I did run into her several times in that arena. Who else? Well, the twins who played Heather and Erica, Angela and Maureen both became flamenco dancers, and I'm
I didn't know that.
around the dance scene in Toronto. And so I run into them in that arena. And Angela, especially, she went on to perform with the Esmeralda Enrique Dance Company for almost 10 years.
Interesting. That's so fun. I love that. Love that you found each other in different circles than
Yes.
you originally met. Was there anyone else in the cast that you wish you would have gotten a chance to do scenes with?
I wish I could have worked with Amanda Steptoe, who played Spike, mostly just because of the dissonance between the way she looked and what people might have expected from her and how soft spoken and sweet she was. It was just such an interesting change, and I just found that such a great acting choice, and it would have been fun to work with her.
I agree. I think Amanda is another one of those people. In my mind, I relate her a lot to Amanda Arcuri, who played Lola. Actually, I feel like they have a lot of similarities where you just like are very
Mm-hmm.
magnetized towards them. They're like very short, little, very cute. Like I see a lot of similarities between those two. And I think it's fun that you were kind of magnetized towards both of them in a way. And I think it's also interesting since she ended up getting the storyline that Stephanie was originally going to get,
Right.
the It's Late plot line. It's kind of an interesting little alternate universe. What if you had gotten a chance to be her mom instead? That's an interesting question. Where do you think Miss Kaye is now?
Right. Well, I think Jerry cheated. They broke up. She moved back from Europe. I think she ran for school trustee.
I love that.
And then she retired, and she's happy to be able to see her grandchildren now.
I love that. Yeah. So where do you think Arthur and Stephanie are? They've produced grandchildren apparently.
I think only Stephanie produced grandchildren. Stephanie, I think, put her quirky, racy, fun fashion sense to use and became a fashion designer.
That for her.
And has 3 lovely children.
I love
Arthur, Arthur is, I see him as a high school theater teacher. And I think he and Mrs. Kaye are part owners in a Japanese restaurant.
That's so specific. I love that. I love how specific that was. Were you sad to leave Degrassi? You were only there for a short time, but
I wasn't sad to leave Degrassi. It wasn't an emotional reaction because that's just part of life as an actor. Stephanie, Nicole Stoffman went on to do another series. I think it was called Learning the Ropes. And so they thought, they came to the end of the storyline for Mrs. Kaye. So I had to leave. I wasn't sad. I was always very proud to be part of the series, and they're wonderful memories, but I wouldn't say I was sad.
That's a great answer. And I have a question from Sierra, who wanted to know if you remember anything about the iconic Swamp Sex Robots prop VHS, if you remember anything about that.
I remember it. I can picture it in my mind, the VHS cover, and it got passed around, and it was a lot of fun on set. Yeah. And I loved, I don't know if it was Yick or Arthur who said something about it. It'll fry your eyeballs or something like that. And I thought it was like, that's a perfect thing. And the name, of course, of the video was so much fun.
So, it's so 13-year-old boys. And I think it's very fun how that trope was repeated with JT and Toby in Next Generation. That's again, that's the repetition in tropes in different generations, and seeing kind of how it translates into the different generations. There's kind of, you said you watched Next Class, so there's that Hunter and Boz and all of that. He has his friends over. I would argue that's similar. That's the same vibe in that generation. Yeah. So that's one of the things that I really love about Degrassi, is that it always just kind of transfers those tropes and finds a new way to give it new life and show how the different generation changes the circumstances. From going from
changes
swamp sex
and doesn't change.
Yeah, from going from swamp sex robots to streaming on online. Right. It's different, but it's the same. It's literally the same. Boys are still curious and doing the exact same thing that they were doing 30 something years ago. It's very fun. I think I've gotten through all of the questions that I had for you. I just wanted to say thank you again so much for coming onto this podcast, Pat. It is such an honor.
I was so happy to be here. I have a question for you, Evie.
Absolutely. Feel free. Let's flip the tables.
You're so young. How did you discover and get involved in the whole Degrassi world?
I started watching Degrassi when I was 7 or 8 years old. I have a sister who's about 3 years older than me, so she's more the age of the target audience. And I kind of just really wanted to be able to spend time with her. And so I would sit and watch Degrassi with her, and I got invested. I fell in love with JT York, and then what happened there. And then I just had such an emotional reaction and such an emotional connection that it just really inspired me. I was already kind of predisposed to enjoying writing and all that kind of creative stuff, and being so emotionally affected by Degrassi just really, it helped me find creative outlets to express myself. And I would write inspired by Degrassi. I went to film school to thinking I could be a Degrassi writer one day. It has always been one of those things that has very much inspired me. And yeah, just the way that I was emotionally impacted and the way that it like a piece of media could mean so much to me just really grabbed me.
That's
So
fantastic. That's
thank you.
fantastic.
Yeah, I could not imagine my life without Degrassi, and I'm very glad to jump back in time and see the origins of it because this is something that I've wanted to do for years. Where I've wanted to watch the original series, but I haven't really. I've wanted to like share it because I enjoy watching and listening to people experience something for the first time. So I wanted to have that outlet to share it with people. And I'm very glad to finally be in the position to produce something like this and
That's
share
great.
it with
Thanks for
people.
sharing that, Evie.
Of course. I'm so glad that you asked. Thank you so much. I don't think I have any more questions for you. Do you have any more questions for me?
Probably a lot, but I won't ask
Oh,
you right
you can
now.
DM me on Instagram. I'm free anytime. We can talk. We can have another chat. I'm open anytime. I've loved doing this, and again, I'm so grateful, so thankful. Um, is there anything that you would like to promote?
I don't think so. I love
Your book. You've
following
got
you.
books. Yeah, you've got your
Oh, I
books.
got books.
You should promote yourself. You are amazing. You are doing so much, and I love following you. You said you love following me. I love following you. Oh, I do have one more question. How does it feel like to be able to follow fans like me, for example? Like, how does it feel to be able to connect with fans of newer generations?
Well, I'm just amazed that, people keep rediscovering the whole Degrassi
Yeah.
franchise. And it's so exciting that whole new generations are discovering it and being involved with just the characters are so engaging and everything. And I can
Yeah.
see how people could keep discovering those characters and those storylines, and it's amazing that it's still going strong.
Yeah, there's a character and a storyline for everybody. Like, even if it's not a direct one to one, there's something that you can relate to and see
True.
yourself in, or see somebody that you know in, and it can help
True.
you learn to cope with the situation. Like, Degrassi helped me learn a lot of like empathy for situations that I'm not necessarily experiencing and I'm not necessarily going to experience firsthand. And yeah, I'm very thankful for Degrassi for that. And yeah, there's people way younger. I'm 25, and there's people way younger than me who are just now discovering the show. And I think it's so fascinating. And I think it'll be very fascinating to listen to a younger generation from me experience it and learn it. And we'll see if there's a reboot. Who knows? But even just being able to listen to people experience what is currently out there for the first time is fascinating. So I'm glad I can share my experience.
Well, keep enjoying and keep doing what you're
I
doing. It's
will.
great,
Yeah,
Evie.
I've got a lot of episodes left. I'm doing all the way to school's out, so I'm trying to get my posting schedule a little bit more regular so I can get there more quickly. Because right now, with the way I'm posting episodes, I'm gonna be there in a couple of years. Like I need to speed it up. It's just hard. Life gets in the way, but yeah,
Hard to fit everything in.
it is. But I'm really glad that we could work this out, and again, thank you so much for coming on to Degrassi Schools In.
Thank you, Evie.
Of
Great to be
course.
here.
Thank you.